we can handle this conversation one of two ways. Either we can generalize everything and be ignorant and say all blacks are Israelites, all African American people are Hebrew Israelites, or we can go off the biblical, historical, factual things that we know and understand that the original Hebrew people did not originate from Africa. They originated from southern Iraq, ancient Babylon, and the land of Ur. They traveled south. They settled in the land of Canaan. Now, when they got to this land, God told them not to mix with the other people. Guess what some of the tribes started doing? Even Abraham, when he slept with Hagar, who was an Egyptian, was of Ham, and he was of Shem. That was mixture. So that's interracial mixing. And that's probably where Isaac, his son, could have had another gene in the lineage now to cause Jacob and Esau to happen that way. Possibility. We don't know, because interracial minglings took place. And then Judah, he slept with Tamar, who was again a Canaanite. So therefore, more interracial mixing when God told them not to. And then throughout history, when they went into other lands, they were mixing with other people. Even the tribe of Benjamin lost pretty much everything through the war that they went through, and they had to get them wives of another land. So all this interracial mixing. And then you got to factor in wars, different dynasties. When different dynasties came and took over the lands, what would happen? The dynasties would bring their people in. The Hebrew people would scatter, and some would remain, and some would intermingle with the natives of that land, or them other dynasties would come in and sleep with Hebrew people. And so the Hebrew people could be all over the place, all over the entire world, and just different looks, different genetics based on the different mixing that took place back in those days. And even when you get to the New Testament, right? It talks about this one person named Timothy. His mother was a Jew, but his father was a Greek. So, of course, if he had an offspring, what's going to take place? But he's still of the Hebrew lineage. He still has Jewish blood in his lineage. And I know people are going to be like, well, he has to be Greek because his father was Greek, but they still are acknowledging that he was, part Hebrew. So it's just a lot of different facts out there, a lot of different interracial mixing, and I'm just trying to generalizing everything. I believe that we can have an open dialogue, an open discussion about it, so that we can find out that we're all connected. Everything really goes back to Adam anyway. It goes back to God. We're all made in God's image and likeness, so we shouldn't be talking about each other like that. And then I want to bring up this conversation. I was in the United States Army, had a friend that I used to work with. She was from Samoa. And we were deployed, and we was having an interesting conversation about this topic. And she told me that in her land, and Samoans can probably vouch for this, that it was a boat that showed up to Samoa, those islands, filled with black people. And the black people that were on the boat, they welcomed them in, and then the black people started mixing in with their people. So the Samoans know this. And she told me about it. And, they know who to sleep with and who not to sleep with, but it's just the way the world has been. And then you go back to the Tower of Babel, we all was one, and then we were scattered. So we can cut the divide out. We can do that.
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Racha HaKwadash, and double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to the other elders, you brethren, you fellow believers of this truth. Shalom to you, sisters. You supporters of this truth. Shalom to the elect. So anyway, I found this video here, right? It seems that Christians or people who are against what we teach become smart when it's trying to prove that it doesn't matter and that we're not Israelites. Now, in his own teaching, when you heard him speak, he said the Israelites would have to be scattered. So some of this things he's saying is correct. And he said it would look like different people. That is also correct. So if this man is a Christian and people hate what we speak, Why are they saying that those people in the land are the true biblical Israelites in an entirety? Wouldn't it be a situation where all the Israelites are scattered from one end of the earth? Let me go to Deuteronomy 28:64. This is like Israelite 101, but to you who may not know, Deuteronomy 28:64, it says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods. Well, that's the key right there. If we're going to be scattered and serve other gods, will we not lay with different nations? Absolutely. This is exactly why the Israelites will look like all nations, right? This is what Revelation 7 and 9 is going into, when John said, behold, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude of all kindreds, nations, and peoples and tongues stood before the throne. This is what he's talking about. To him, they just look like all different nations and people. But guess what? They are Israelites. When you go into the word kindred, it goes to phule, meaning all persons descended from the 12 tribes of the patriarch of Jacob. And it says, which neither thy fathers have known wood and stone, like the cross, the Christian cross, and the cobblestone, Islam, Christianity, Hindu, all these other gods. So, this man, he said quite a few things that, well, some of it made sense, but a lot of it didn't. He said Timothy was a Greek, father was a Greek, and his mother was a Jewess that believed. That's the key. So when they say, let's look that up real quick. I don't want to quote it wrong. Acts 16 and 1. It says, then came he to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was named Timotheus, who's the son of a certain woman, right? There's a reason why they said that, of a certain woman. It's going to tell you, which was a Jewess and believed. That's what I wanted to get into. That made the difference, because you had believers and non-believers. So she believed, and Timothy's father was a Greek. Now, if you know about the Greeks, it wasn't just one nation. Greeks was like America. Like when you say America, this is why we know this is Rome, Greece, all over again. When you say Rome, when you look at America, you look at multitudes of people, right? All through here. So this is the same thing with Greece. You had the Armenians, the Egyptians, you had Jews who was calling themselves Greeks. You had various other people. If you was a citizen, but you was an Israelite, but a citizen of the Greek province, you would call yourself a Greek. So they were both Israelites, but it said a Jewish that believed, because in that time, this is what Paul was dealing with, and this is why he in 1 Corinthians 7, he when he came up with that letter about what is it? I say this, lo, not the Lord, meaning the law. If any man have an unbelieving wife, let him not put her away, and vice versa, because that caused a lot of adultery. So that's why it said pretty much a Jewess that believed. They could have just said a Jewess, but it says and believed. That's the key, right? To know that this whole connection, it wasn't going to say the father was a Jew too. You know what I'm saying? It could have said the father, the Jewish that believed, and the father that didn't believe. Well, if an average man out here says, and I walk up to the average Jake, when I mean the so-called black man, and I say, you're a Jew, right? And he said, no. Would he label himself as a Jew? Absolutely not. But anyway, let's go on back. I just wanted to go into that. So yes, we would serve different gods. We would follow different customs. He was talking about Samoan and, the other islands. This is, it makes sense why we went to Hawaii and various other places of the world, the Philippines too. They were dark, King Philip conquered that, but That's why you have a multitude of nations. All the nations are pretty much scattered. But even in the Philippines, a lot of them are Israelites, you know. Cambodia is right there. You know what I'm saying? Where you think we were stationing at? And this man made a great point. I was ready to go all in on him. He just don't have the understanding. But he made a great point when he was talking about blacks came over and this is us. This is us. This is why there's such a problem with us. We're the procreators of the earth, period. And if you, what's his name? If you like the Martin Sheens and I can't remember the other ones, a lot of them, I mean, hell, you got Robert De Niro still dropping kids, Al Pacino. I can't remember the other ones, the Baldwins. You know what I'm saying? They might even be Jake. That's my belief. You know, but they seeding. I'm telling you, that's Jake. So let's go to Genesis 48, and I'm gonna get to the point. In 3, and Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make thee a multitude of people, and I will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. Right? So he's getting confused with biology, right? Because when you're dealing with lineage, you go with line. When you're dealing with a line, you're dealing with an ancestry. So the line in this society is the woman, right? But the line is actually of the father. Like the book of Numbers say, Numbers 1 actually, when it says they declared the pedigree by the house of their fathers, it makes sense. The male determines the XX, YY, the chromes, everything. So see, not that the mother don't play a part, right? Her mitochondria, her blood, which came from her father, right? So this is why you might look like your mother. But where did your mother get her looks from? Her mother or father. You see what I'm saying? And then this man, he's getting confused and saying, well, Jacob and Esau, he doesn't understand the scriptures. Genesis 25, the Lord separated them nations. In Abraham as well. We're going to get that too. Let me get the one with Abraham. Yeah, let me get that. Genesis 17. Is it Genesis 17? Genesis 17. It says, then Abraham fell upon his face, right, and laughed because he's old, and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? With a question mark. Abraham said unto God, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. Now, when Abraham laid with Hagar and had Ishmael, well, yeah, Hebrew as well. Well, let me say Ishmaelite, right? That nation is not a chosen line. It'll tell you. And God said to Sarah, thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed. And it's almost like the Lord allowed this to happen with Hagar because it's acceptable anyway, because you can mess with the, to bring your children. But, when you read the story, Sarah had a little jealousy about it. See, women don't really mind you messing around, so to speak. Well, this society is different. But when you start having other children, women get a little bothered, especially if they don't have one by you, right? Anyway, and she shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. So we go look up this word seed. We see here, it goes to descendants. It goes to descendant. So we go to descendant, extending downward. Okay. Descendant seems to be prevailing, different uses. Descend. Higher, lower, descending. It just seems descending like to bring down in a line. So that's what a descendant actually going to, like to descend, right? But it goes into sower, offspring. So we see here, let me go up here. It says sower, offspring. And we know what the offspring is. We're just going to scroll on down. So, yeah, that happened. See, the problem with, like, Exodus 20, we're going to get into that in a second. I don't want to jump around. Exodus 20, there was a reason why he said not to mess with the heathens. But in circumstances, the Israelites did still mess with the heathens, such as Moses and various others. They had concubines. It was because under the time of calamity, and under our deliverance, we're not supposed to go back and follow their customs, So anyway, I'll get into that in a second, Lord's will. This says moral and ritual dimensions, purity. Let me go on down. It says seed, spiritual seed, eschatological hope, seed, purity of laws, sacrificial requirements, offsprings, national identity, carries privilege, the covenant, prophets console the exiles, your seed and your name shall remain, restoration, era exploits, the same term, I will plant them in their land and they will never again be uprooted, which I believe that's Amos 9:15, which also you can go to 1 Chronicles 17:9 will tell you the same thing. So we should all know what offspring, seed, patriarch, family, which really goes to father. We should all know what that means and what that goes to. So we're going to go here to the duties of kings, right? Duties of kings, where people get this kind of confused as well. When thou art, this is Deuteronomy 17:14, when thou art to come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shall possess it, this is what I was saying earlier, and shall dwell therein, and shall say, I will set a king over me. See, they're not established, right? Like as the nations that are about me, because there's a time under calamity or a time when we get in a situation that it's a sensitive time, you know what I'm saying? And it says, and shall dwell therein, and shall say, I will set a king over me like the other nations about me. Thou shalt in any wise set him a king over thee, whom the Lord, it says, thou shalt in any wise set him a king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose, one from among thy brethren, which you know what we do. We like everybody else except ourselves. It seems like nothing has changed. You know what I'm saying? There'll be gun violence, gun blazings, bullets swirling like Vietnam and Vietcong and the Iraqi war and the Korean war. All these bombs and shots going back and forth, arrows and people throwing things back and forth at each other. And it takes one cop to roll in, right? And everybody dissipates. I witnessed it happen. I witnessed it happen quite a few times. And so what I mean by that is we're such a docile people. We're quick to follow the ways of the heathen before it's establishing our own heritage. You know what I'm saying? That's just what we do. Now, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Solomon having wives. There wasn't nothing wrong with Moses having a wife of a heathen. It wasn't nothing wrong with that man that was getting it in with that heathen woman that what's his name? Damn, I can't remember his name. Put the javelin through. You know what I'm saying? Damn, I can't remember his name. Phinehas, right? Phinehas, yeah, put the javelin through, right? But what he did, he was more likely practicing the custom of the way what they were doing. And again, that was a sensitive time. You see what I'm saying? We haven't even, we out in the wilderness, and Jake sees the first piece of woman, right? And you know what Jake would do. This is why the Lord said, thou shalt have no other God beside me. Once you understand what we would do, if you can imagine being an Israelite now, then we'll go up in a Jehovah Witness church and merge our Hebrew Israelite roots with Jehovah Witnesses just for the woman. And when you do that, that's when you've committed sin against the Lord. Because now You're part of them, but you're still, and let's say the Jehovah's Witness say, go ahead, you can still follow the Hebrew God just as long as you're with me, and follow my God too. And that's where it becomes a problem. But if a man takes a Jehovah's Witness woman, he lays with her, and she willing to be his wife, then there's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of Israelites don't like that, but hey, that's what it is. The fact is, you can't merge into their gods. You can't follow them. Let's keep reading. It says, we'll get to the point. Here we go. But he shall not multiply himself, nor horses. He should not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt. That's what I was just saying. In that time, how we were quick, even though, okay, we out of Egypt, even though we're doing well. Man, I can't wait to get my hand on a heathen woman, or a heathen custom. You see what I'm saying? It's at different times for it, like with Achan. When Achan took the Babylonian garment, right? The Lord said, don't touch it. It's filthy. But then there was time the Lord allowed us to take whatever we want. Guess what? We're going to take the gold that's ours now, and we're going to purify it, right? It says to the end that he should multiply horses, for as much as the Lord has said unto you, ye shall henceforth return no more that way. Why did he say no more that way? It didn't have nothing to do with having horses, right? Let's go on. Neither shall he multiply himself wives to himself. Why is he saying that? The same thing, right? This is why, even at the end of the day, when Apostle Paul said, let the bishop be blameless, a husband of one wife, that was actually talking about the women. When you go into the commentaries and read it, those women were was being passed around so much with different men. If he married her, it couldn't be his one wife, because she done been around. And the fact that he couldn't hold the duty, the daily administrations of the church, with the confusion of all the adultery. And this is what our people have always done. You know what I'm saying? It says, neither shall he multiply himself wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. Again, Christians use this and say, see, you're not supposed to have multiple wives. When Rehoboam had wives, they're going into Solomon. But guess what? His wives turned away his heart. That's what it said, his wives. Well, we know that Eve, as one woman, turned Adam's heart. So either your heart is turned or not. It doesn't have anything to do with a heathen or 5 different women. Either you're with the Lord or you're not with the Lord. That's what it boils down to. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. It's probably a little bit more than that, but I think I hit the points. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? We all scattered, and that's why Romans 8 tells you it's the spirit that bear witness, and that we waking up, and we're going to look like all different people. So we had the conversation with this guy. A lot of these Christians, these conversations come down because there's Hebrew Israelites that talk about it's just about black. This is why when Christians come up to us with microphones and cameras, which they have done, you can clearly see, you could clearly explain to them, and then they would get a better vision. I think a lot of these people love Esau so much, he want the Jews to be, like Esau. But you got to use it and tell the truth, right? That like some of them, it makes sense to them that when all Jews can't look like us. But I don't know why when you first wake up, you don't fight and be thankful for what you have first before you start dabbling outside the spectrum. The bottom line is the Jews going to look like, Israelites going to look like all nations. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.